Hello, in this video we'll walk through the initial configuration for HP OneView management virtual appliance. So I will not cover initial installation. So user pretty much, they can hop on the HP OneView product page, and then from there they can be directed into HP support page, so they can download software. It's a VMware, OVA file. So they just install in the vCenter and, finish the initial setup, giving the IP, giving the login credential. So after everything is installed, they can using the web browser to browse the IP address, and this is some web page they should be able to see to log in. So and also this demo will be conducted using the HP OneView simulator. This is the simulator tool available for internal HP users and HP partners. We'll do the initial config using the simulator, and I also have a live uh, OneView appliance with the real HP C7000 plate system chassis. So later on in the second section of this video, we can let the users see to see how the OneView is connected with the Ethernet network, with the Cisco Nexus, with the Brocade fiber channel switches. Okay, let's get started. So we'll first get logged in. So this credential should be specified during your initial installation. And this is the pretty much the initial login screen. And the first step for the OneView is to define some network. So we are ready to import the enclosure later on. So pretty much this is the initial view. This is the main menu, so user can, go different sections of the configuration. So the dashboard is what we've seen. The server profile is the core concept for the server connectivity setup. Networking, this is the mainly around the HP Virtual Connect because for the Blade system C7000. So OneView networking right now is currently will cover the Virtual Connect uplink configuration, including the fiber channel and the Ethernet. So network and network sets is what we are going to cover initially, because without that, when you import enclosure later on, it will ask you to configure that. The volume, the storage, this part is mainly in the integration with the three part for the from the OneView. So I'm not sure if I have the time to cover that because this video is mainly for the initial configuration. So data center is the data center facility view. So pretty much you can set up the different HP ProLine server, plate system chassis in a rack inside the rack. So later on, the OneView can show the data center chassis physical temperature, power, visual display, and the user can click to zoom into different places. So this is the main dashboard. You can see the server profile and the different, the properties view. Uh, so right now you can see right now I have a zero enclosure, zero interconnect. So the concept for the logical interconnect, this is mainly around the virtual connect. I'll cover that in when we get there. So appliance, this is mainly refer to the HP OneView, about different, the uh, job history stuff. So as I mentioned, the first we need to go to the network. The difference between the network and the network sets, whenever you see the network sets inside OneView, it's a concept about aggregating multiple networks over one server NIC. So this is mainly the trunking concept between the OneView server downlink to the server. Okay, so network set will set it up, but inside the network sets, we need to have a multiple networks. So first, we need to define the networks. So pretty much the flow is define the networks and then define the network sets. So uh, pretty much for the VMware hypervisor environment, most of time, you have the trunking go to, multiple VLANs going to one VM NIC. So we'll need the network set. And then you define the logical interconnect group. Logical interconnect, actually, the logical interconnect group is more like the template for the HP virtual connect. So inside the logical template group, logical interconnect group, you set, okay, what's my virtual connect layout at the back of the C7000 enclosure. So after you set it up, and then you will need to set up the enclosure groups. Inside enclosure group right now, current version, it's pretty simple. You just need to say, okay, for this, you know, C7000 template, I will attach this to the logical interconnect group. We just set it up. So after you have the enclosure group, now you're really ready to, be ready to import the real C7000 enclosure. And then you can, inside the enclosure group, you can say, okay, I want to add enclosure. After the enclosure being added, you should be able to see the enclosures have the number one showing up here, and also the logical interconnect will showing up for this particular enclosure. So very important concept for the, if you see the enclosure group and the logical interconnect group, it's more like a template. There's no real hardware matching for that. But without this concept, you cannot import any enclosure. After you are in a real enclosure being imported, you will have the enclosure show up, and for each enclosure, you will have logical interconnect. It's more like HP virtual connect showing up for this particular enclosure. So they are really the physical, the enclosure layout for this particular enclosure, and for this, the virtual connect layout behind at the back of this particular enclosure. And the interconnect, this is also referred to the the mainly for the virtual connect. So the interconnect is more like a low level. You can see the port statistic, counters stuff. But if you want to go say, okay, I want to check, what's my VLAN configuration for this particular uplink going to my Brocade or going to my Nexus for Ethernet, then the logical interconnect is the right place to go. Okay, so this is some general concept over here. So in this example, we'll assuming we have a one enclosure and we have two virtual connect modules, say, okay, Flex Fabric in slot, IO-Bay 1 and 2, and we have some connection to go into the Ethernet switch. We have some connection going to the fiber channel switch, and we'll set up, some, networks. So let's get started. Okay, so this is some network I already set it up. So we'll just set up new one just for. So for VLAN 10, so usually for the this is the concept, whenever you set up the network, there's a concept called, virtual connect design. So virtual connect, we have active and active passive design. So in general, I like active design better because, both my all of my virtual connect uplink will be active, will be able to forward the traffic. So that's we'll use over here. The key for the active design for virtual connect, is to define a mirroring the network name so with the same VLAN ID. So let's say we'll do the VLAN 10 module A, right? And I'll do the Ethernet, and just leave the default tag over here. So there's another unique feature for virtual connect called the tunnel network. I will not cover over here. So there's some documentation, and I also recorded some video on my YouTube and blog page, so you can see how when to use the tunnel network. Pretty much in summary, the tunnel, if you set up the tunnel inside the virtual connect, pretty much you have only need to set up one internal network, and it will tunnel every VLANs coming from your Nexus, from your Extreme, from your Arista, switches, and going, being forwarded to the server VM NIC, and vice versa. Anything from your server NIC will be forwarded to the upstream top of rack switch without, virtual connect, managing any tagging stuff. So it's a unique solution, but for this video, we'll just use a default tag. Okay. So this is so assuming I have a VLAN 10 over here, the you have to, this field is important. You have to match between your to your upstream switch and your server VM NIC. And later on, we have the option to set this one as a native VLAN or untagged VLAN. But right now, you need to specify the VLAN ID, and it has to match with the upstream device and the downstream device for the virtual connect. Purpose over here, this one you can leave it at the general. It doesn't affect any virtual connect forwarding stuff. It's more for the HP OneView for vCenter plugin. There's a for this for that plugin, there's a feature called network details. They can try to understand what you config, in the OneView profile, and try to config your vSwitch or DV switch for you. So, but for that plugin to work right, you have to make sure, okay, assuming this the VLAN 10 is my uh, management VLAN, you need to minimum say, okay, I want to manage, map it to the management. So that plugin will understand, okay, for VLAN 10, that's my VM kernel VLAN. Okay, so we'll not cover too much over here, but for default, for OneView, you can just leave it as general. It doesn't affect any of your, forwarding performance or functionality. Okay, preferred bandwidth, just leave it over there. You can set it up. It's more, when you go into the server profile configuration later on, that's the default value it will be pulled from, for the particular, the server connections. Maximum, bandwidth, just leave it over there. If you want to get more details, we have the various, user guides to explain these two fields. But pretty much, this is a whatever value you set it over here will be affecting the later on the server profile or default value configuration. Okay, Smart Link, leave it the default. It's just more like a link state tracking for the Cisco networking folks. So pretty much we'll monitor the uplink, physical link status. If that link or the whole port channel go down, will disable the server NIC. Then on the VMware side, on the server side of Windows Linux, they have the ability to fail over to the redundant NIC. Okay, private network. This is more for the uh, some basic functionality for security. So, for example, if there's two blades inside one enclosure, or multiple enclosure, but they are in the same network, VLAN 10, but you do not want them to talk with each other, you can set them as a private network, for this VLAN, and pretty much inside this VLAN, any the for any servers inside one enclosure, they cannot talk with each other inside the internal link. They have to go up. Okay, so that's the basic concept. Okay, we'll do the crate. There's a crate and a crate plus. Crate plus is just okay. I want to keep this crate network menu. I have some other stuff to create. Create, if you click that, it will back to the main configuration mode. Okay, so we'll do the crate plus. We'll create another VLAN 10. So this one later on, I need to assign this one to module one, the first Flex Fabric module. If you click, I need to create another one for the module 2 for second Flex Fabric. So that's kind of the concept for the virtual connect active design. Pretty much you define mirroring network names, with A and B usually, or 1 and 2, it doesn't matter. This name really doesn't matter. Any name making sense to you. But the thing is, you need to have the same VLAN ID, and the one network will be applied to the first virtual connect module. The second network will be applying to the second virtual connect module. So we'll click VLAN 10. I'll try to remember the name. Okay, create. So we'll do the VLAN 10 man. Uh, Yes, it's the module B. Okay, we'll do the same thing here. Okay, then we'll just create again. We'll just create some others. VLAN 11, module A. We'll say, okay, for VLAN 11, I need to use it as for my vMotion, right? So we do the same thing. 11, and I'll say VLAN to 11 module B. And we'll say we'll create a VLAN 12 for my VM data network module A. We'll give it to 12. VLAN 12 module B. Create 12. That's pretty much it. So assuming you have a VMware blade, you have three just network, the management, vMotion and the VM data, just some basic, configuration, right? You can also include your iSCSI UNFS, the data storage, the IP storage network. Assuming you have this basic setup, and we'll just create, six networks, three, going to the virtual connect module one, three going to the virtual connect module two. So we're done with this. We'll say create. Okay. So pretty much this is the six we just created. You can see this is some summary. You'll see right now they're just, we just created. We really have not used them anywhere else. So where it's not used by the uplink, it's not used by any, server profile. Okay. So it's not used by any, network sets. So right now, the next step is we need to create a network set. This is assuming you have a trunking uh, you'll have the trunk, the interface, going on to the server side. If you are really using the Windows Linux, typically you do not need the network set because bare metal OS they don't do the tagging. It's only for the Hyper-V, the VMware hypervisor stuff. Okay, so we'll create a network set, so we'll create, uh, a network set one. Okay. So this is the same thing, when you assign this, assuming instead of assign the single network to that VM NIC, or NIC for Windows or Linux, if you want to assign this network set and later on what's a default, preferred and what's a default maximum, bandwidth. And now we need to add it. So right now, remember we are doing the active, so we need to have one network set going to the module A. So we'll do module A. You can use a control key or shift key to a multi-select. So right now we are selecting the three over here. Okay. So this is a key thing here. So untagged. So think about, you are looking over here at one physical NIC connection. Okay, inside this one physical NIC, you have three VLANs. And right now, the virtual connect is asking you, the OneView is asking you, okay, which VLAN optionally you want set it as the untagged VLAN. So typically, for is, so you want to set, you are assuming you are doing the DHCP or especially for the Pixie, you want to set your management as the, Pixie network as a on tag. Because, when the server first boot up, Nick has no idea about the tagging. It's just, the trying to do the basic BIOS booting. So typically, one customer, contact HP, okay, why my Pixie is not working? Typically, it's their Pixie network is not being set as an untag. So we'll just assuming, okay, we'll set the basic management network as an untag, okay? So right now, pretty much you can see you are done with the basic, trunking configuration going to the server side. We would create the first one. We have three networks, and we set one as the, uh, you know, uh, Pixie, the untagged network. So right now, remember active, we need to create another network set for the second virtual module. So we'll go to create plus. So this network will be created. You can see over here. So right now we are going to the second one. We'll just copy the first name. Uh, my network set. We'll just change to 2. Okay, now we need to add network. So remember right now, actually, you can see we just need to set anything we just created with B. Okay, so we do the add. You do the same thing, assuming you have the primary and secondary Pixie booting. So you want to make sure this guy is set up as untagged. Okay. So right now we're pretty much done with the two network set configuration. We'll just say finish, create plus. Oh, actually, I should say create. Never mind. You can just cancel it. So let's review it. So you can see it's nothing here. We just the created three network inside this the network set. Just review it. Okay, now you are pretty much predefine the networks and the network sets required for later module enclosure and the logical interconnect group definition. So now the next step is, we first go here, networks, and the second we go here, and now we can define the logical interconnect group. So we'll just delete this one. Don't need this. So, okay, assuming you get a brand new chassis, nothing, a brand new OneView, nothing is defined. We'll just do a create. The name, you can say, okay, my, say, virtual connect. You can say my IO bay template. Okay, so this is remember if you see a term group inside the OneView like logical interconnect group or enclosure group, it's more like a template. You tell the OneView what to expect when you import a real enclosure. So in this example, we'll just say we'll choose the Flex Fabric as a basic module for the IO bay one, and then now pretty much it will say, okay, automatically populated as a second bay. So for the C7000, it has the 8 IO module base. Typically, customers see the 1, 2, or 1, 2, 3, and 4. Some customers see the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So whatever your real enclosure is populated, you really need to match the module here. Okay, so you can see this is some supported configuration here. Right now for Cisco FAX B22 is more like a Nexus 2000 for HP enclosure. Right now we kind of support we can see the basic serial number, but really if you want to leverage the OneView core server profile concept, the virtual connect module is really the module empower that functionality. Okay, so right now we are telling the OneView, okay, we have one enclosure, have the IO bay like this with a 2 flex fabric module. Now how can I go to I'll just change this to capital. So what's my configuration, uplink, for the networking in regard to this module? So Uplink set is more, you can think about, the virtual connect uplink to the Ethernet switch to the fiber channel switch. Okay, so right now we'll say my Ethernet, my Ethernet uplink trunk A. Okay, so you want to see the Ethernet. Leave it as automatic, so pretty much the virtual connect will take care of everything else. LCP timer, you can change it. By default, we use short. By default, Nexus using long, the 30 seconds. They can cooperate with each other. They don't have to match. But some functionality like SSU on the Nexus will require the long, so you can optionally to set it. So default is 1 second short timeout. So now this is remember this is for my first virtual connect module, first effect fabric. So you want to add the networks. Okay, so right now we are talking about we need to add the user control to you may say, okay, why cannot add the network set? As I mentioned, network set is really currently is only for the server profile downlink to the VMware Windows Linux. So that concept doesn't apply to the uplink. Right now, we are defining your uplink VLAN configuration with your networking team, with your Nexus, with your the HP networking Ethernet switch, Arista, this typical the Ethernet vendors. So we'll just do the A for the module, and we'll just say add. Okay, now you can see we kind of get a similar output here. Remember this, we defined this one as a network set, but this is the different. The view you are here is, the previous network set is for the server downlink to go into your operating system. This one is actually is an uplink going to your top of rack switch. So right now you can have the optionally, you can define a native VLAN. So if you say, okay, my VLAN 10 is native, then on your switch side, you need to define your nexus as a native for VLAN 10 as well. They have to match. Okay, so over here, and the previous untag that's for the server profile, and they don't have to match. You can say, okay, from my server to the virtual connect, VLAN 10 is untagged, and then from my VLAN 10 going to Nexus, it will be tagged. That's totally fine. So the virtual connect will add the VLAN 10 and then send it out to the Nexus. So they don't have to match between this, native and the previous, network set untag field. Okay, so we'll just leave it over here, and then after you define the networks for this, the top of rack switch, you really need to say, okay, how do I define the uplink? What's my really this one you have to really matching your physical cabling, right? So assuming I have, X5 and X6, remember this is module one. I have going to my Nexus switch. So you select that, you say add. So pretty much by looking at this screen, anyone will tell you, okay, you have, two ports, X5, X6 going to the upstream Nexus side, and they will try to negotiate the LACP tunnel, LACP bundle if the Nexus side is set up as the VPC or regular, port channel. And then inside this port channel, you will have, three networks, and nothing is being, set as a native. Okay, so right now you can say create, or remember I want to create another one for my second. I'll just do the Control C to copy this name, so I can have the consistent naming. So I want to create another one for the for the is for my second module, right? So Ethernet and nothing else, add network right now, you can see really my A network disappear because it's been used for the first network, the uplink set. So right now you can do the shift for the module B. Then we'll do the add, and then you can see we'll do the uplink ports, and then now you can do module 2, 5 and 6. Okay, then you will see add. So pretty much this is the mirroring uplink bundle configuration for module 1. You have the same VLANs, but with a different internal name, and you make sure this is for the bay 2. And then now pretty much that's it. We'll just say create, and you can see this is the visual presentation. Say, okay, your A going to your module 1, your B going to the module 2. You can say, okay, how about my fiber channel? Currently, at the time of this recording, 2014 September. The latest version is 1.10. OneView. Right now, we don't support FCOE uplink. We support FCOE downlink going to the server. So if you want to do the fiber channel part, you need to define a separate fiber channel or uplink set going to your Brocade or going to the MDS to carry your fiber channel traffic forward. Okay, so we'll just say, okay, my FC uh, uplink one, this is A. You can see the fiber channel. Actually, that's yeah, this one. Actually, that's a good point. So in the previous one, if you have a fiber channel, oh, you need to define the fiber channel network. Otherwise, you can see add uplink set. If I want to define a fiber channel, I don't have anything defined. The reason I have this one is, that's for my leftover configuration from the last testing. But, so we should create that one. So I think let's go back to the network configuration to do that. Actually, that's a good exercise. We'll just say create. This is just a template. It doesn't really apply to anything. It's just internal. We set up this template. Okay, right now we'll go back to the network. Okay, we'll go back to the network and we'll create a network for the fiber channel. Uh, FC VC fabric 1A. Okay, so we'll do the fiber channel. Fabric attach. So this typically you use a fabric attach. You use direct attach only when you have the virtual connect with the HP3 part store surf storage array. So that's a unique feature. You don't really need any fiber channel switches. You can do the direct attach. Assuming you have a MDS, um, the Brocade switch will do the default fabric attach. Associated with the SAN, this is a more advanced feature. You can leave it over there. This is only when you have OneView has the feature code, Brocade Network Advisor, integration. So if you have a Brocade Network Advisor, the OneView can import this product inside itself. So you can talk with the advisor, and then advisor will provision all your Brocade switches to do the automatic zoning. So that's more like a not the initial configuration if you are not using the Brocade or if you do not have the Brocade network advisor. Okay, so this field you can just leave it there. It will not do any harm over there. So prefer, this is bandwidth stuff, and this is just some fiber channel how we do the initial, round robin, the floggy logging, and some link failover parameter. This is everything is default. So we'll say, create plus. Actually, I want to create another one for the second module, FC VC fabric B. So fabric, that's pretty much you pretty much define the two fiber channels network. Let's see where the these two guys. Yeah. Okay, now we're I should have done this one the first step. just to make, concept simpler. But, you can come back to do this one anytime, right? So like this time I forgot, I can come back to network and define it. So we'll just go back to this guy again. We just need to add this fiber channel connectivity. So we'll do the edit. Okay, now this is what we defined for the Ethernet. Right now for Ethernet, we're good. So this is some, basic stuff, for the multicast SMP. You can leave everything default here. Just add network set. So we'll say my FC uplink 1A go to fiber channel. So we'll pick the one we have. Now this is a physical uplink. So you can see we'll do the one and the two. Oh yeah, this is module one. Module one, first of flex fabric, first of 4 port, you can do the fiber channel. We're just assuming we have two cables, right? So if you have a multiple cables, the way virtual connect working is, doing the fiber channel, MPV mode. We are not doing any, so we can talk with a MDS or Brocade, either or. So we are not really doing any kind of e-port trunking, ISL link. We're just doing the basic MPV, logging. So if you have a multiple blades, pretty much the blades will do the round robin. So the first blade will log in from this port, the second blade will log into this port. Okay, so this is the first one. I will just create another one. Create plus. Let's see, link B, fiber channel. Make sure select the B. You say, okay, I want to select module 2. I also have another two cables connecting. This time I'm done, so I can say create. So now you can see my fiber channel has two guys. So totally I have a two Ethernet uplink, and a two fiber channel uplink. And then you say okay. Okay, now after you finish, network sets, logical interconnect group, you are ready to define the enclosure group. Okay, so we'll just create a new one. Let me make sure I don't have good. I don't my enclosure is still there available to import. So we'll do my C7000 with this is a template, my C7000 with VCFF. Okay, so you can see, you can choose whatever logical interconnect group defined. So in this case, we'll choose the one we used. Okay, so then you say create. So enclosure group current version is very simple. You just uh, match it, link it with the logical interconnect group you just created. There are some basic script you can execute. You can check the user guide, but it's just some, the automatic setup for the C7000 during the import process. But you don't have to set it up. So that's it. And then my LV group, and also, so right now you are kind of, you are good for the import, your C7000 enclosure. Before you do that, you typically during the import process, the OneView will try to or do some firmware upgrade, using the default. There's one important concept for the OneView. It's called the firmware bundle. So inside the firmware bundle, you can add the different, the HP firmware bundle we call the SPP, service pack for ProLine. So around every 3 months, we will release the new version. So current version is 2014-09. And this one is 06. And it just comes a default bundle with OneView. You don't need to manually do that. But later on, when you have a new bundle, you can download it and upload into your virtual appliance. Okay, so during the import process, the OneView will try to use inside this SPP. There's all kinds of firmware driver stuff, including the OA firmware, Virtual Connect firmware, during the and ILO firmware. So during import process, the so let's go into the enclosure. So after you confirm your firmware setting, you can add enclosure, right? So this is what we'll cover over here. So let's say define the IP address or host name. This is your real uh, OA IP address. We'll say I know the for this simulator at the background process there's this is the OA address. So enclosure group. So this is the one you want to set it up, So you set up this one. So you need to say, okay, I want to import this enclosure, and I know this enclosure layout should be the one defined previously, right? And this is managed manually, or you use this one. So if you use this, manually pretty much, we'll leave it. If it's a supported, we can import into the OneView. We'll leave whatever firmware over there. We don't touch it. But if you say, okay, I want to, during the import process, I want to unify all the enclosure firmware, level like OA and ILO, then you say, okay, I want to choose this one, right? So pretty much, if you have another enclosure with the same layout, you can import into the same enclosure group, and then because you set up the firmware baseline, the second enclosure will have a exact firmware for the ILO and the OA as the first enclosure. So this really comes in handy when you start to import more and more enclosures. You know exactly, their firmware is matching. Okay, so right now this will confirm everything. We'll just say add. So now OneView virtual appliance is trying to communicate with HP OA, and if you get everything right, credential IP, the import process will start. For the real hardware, the import it will take some time. I'll say about 20 minutes. Because it's about 10-20 minutes. It depends on if you want to update your firmware and ILO for all the the server and OA, right? So if you have that option on, it will take longer. So right now it just say add it. It kind of give you the message say the for this version no update is required. Pretty much over here we need to wait for a little bit, for this enclosure to show up. So right now you can see the enclosure is being added. So we'll just pause over here so you don't have to wait for the whole process to finish. We'll come back later. Okay, now the enclosure has been imported. So let's take a look. So this is so we get some warning. You can take a look at it. It just say encounter some problem with the profile. This is sometimes it's normal, like especially when you have a license problem. In this case, I didn't really do any license. So if you click over here, so this is our enclosure one, the bay one. So let's see what do we get here. So pretty much this is say insufficient HP OneView license. So pretty much you really need to do is to go to there's a settings for the virtual appliance. It's just to say, okay, I need more license. So there's a place so you can add a license stuff. Okay. So right now we'll go back to this enclosure again. So you can see the enclosure name showing up over here, and you have some power, temperature information. You have basic configuration. You have the layout for this enclosure, and this you have the I/O bay, right? It should match, otherwise you should get some error warning and stuff. So after import, the very important thing, remember enclosure group and the logical interconnect group. Logical interconnect group is more like a template, but right now you have the real enclosure. You should have a real logical interconnect, so that they should match. So if you go to the logical interconnect, you can see you have this enclosure one, logical interconnect, defined. If you if you look closely, you should see the exact match with your template configuration, right? So assuming you have a second enclosure coming over, being imported, you should have a second, say, enclosure 2 here, okay? So we are just a demo for the only enclosure, the first and only enclosure. So after the second enclosure imported, you still should only have one enclosure template, uh, enclosure group, and one logical interconnect group because your concept, your template doesn't change, but you should have two enclosures and two logical interconnect over here. Okay, and both interconnect, if you look, they should pretty much the same, but they are mapping to the different, the different, the uh, interconnect physical module. So right now you can see this is enclosure one, interconnect one. So if you have a second enclosure, you should have another two modules showing up. Enclosure two interconnect module, interconnect one, and the enclosure two interconnect two. Okay. So let's take a look. Very important thing, you review a logical interconnect because all your uplink configuration for your Ethernet and fiber channel will be located over here. So you can see this is consistent. Consistent means, HP OneView allow you to have different configuration than your template. By default, when you import a configuration enclosure, you should have consistent because you didn't change anything. But sometimes when you say, okay, I want to do sniffing for, using one of the uplink, only for this enclosure and not for the other enclosure, you can optionally define a separate uplink at the enclosure level, not the template level. So that's possible. That's the expected behavior. But during your initial import process, this should be consistent. And sometimes, if you say, okay, well, I want to change my uplink configuration. Okay, I add another port. So pretty much the way the process you work is, you go to your template level. Assuming you have a two enclosure, you have this, the right now, after running, you say, okay, I want to add another Ethernet, port going to this, to Ethernet uplink. The first thing you need to do is add a template level and apply. After you apply, and if you have two enclosures, you will go into the logical interconnect, and both your individual enclosure will show a warning say inconsistent, because current version, the expected behavior, the design behavior is, it allow you to have the different configuration between template and individual enclosure. But if you're as a user, you say, okay, I do need this X7 to be added to my individual enclosure so I can leverage this real port. And then you go to action. There's a manual will show up, say, update from enclosure group. Right now, because it's inconsistent, it doesn't show up. But when you have a inconsistent configuration, there's an option you can mitigate it. And you do the same for the second enclosure. That's, very important concept. And also, okay, another important concept is, firmware baseline. Right now, you can say, okay, uh, you, update firmware. So if you want to update your firmware, the virtual connect firmware, make sure it's matching with your baseline. You need to, if it says, okay, your firmware is not matching, you need to update, then you can do the update firmware over here. Okay, so this is some option you will play for. This is for the virtual connect firmware only. Okay, remember during the initial import process, the OneView will update your OA and server ILO. But for the virtual connect firmware, this is a separate place. This is you can optionally say you want to match it or you want to leave it with the default version. Just pay attention to that. So this is a an 8 IO base. So if you do the real edit, you can see more detail if you say okay, I want to take a look at for this particular enclosure, pay attention to this menu. It's right now you are at the logical interconnect. Uh, so you can say, okay, I want to add it, so typically you don't want to change it over here. Otherwise you will have this, inconsistent configuration. But this is a good way you can review it. So pretty much, everything copied, over from the template, right? Another way to review it, is to go to, by default it's overview. You can go to the general. General will have all these sections display. You just need to do the scroll up and scroll down, right? So you can see all this information. This is install. This is whatever available in the baseline. So right now it's matching, but the sometimes it's not matching. So you have the option to upgrade it, and then that's pretty much it. Uplink set. This is you have a two defined over here. Uh, two Ethernet and two fiber channel. Okay, so stacking, this is just an internal stacking, really. Uh, that's pretty much. So if you want to see let's see the uplink, my, yeah, so networking. I should go to the logical interconnect. So if you want to see the port counters, then you should go to even lower level called the interconnect. Interconnect level doesn't deal with any display any VLAN information. It more display, if you want to take a look at the general, it more display with the port level. You can see, okay, what's being connected, connector, what's your transceiver, what's your remote connection, right? So right now you can see. So later on, I will have a real setup. I can show you for the real environment, but this is for some place in the real environment you will take a look at for the different statistics, right? So there's some graph you can take a look. Okay, downlink, this is going to the server side, right? So this is someplace you can. So right now, pretty much you have all the network set up. You import the enclosure. You have this for your real enclosure. You have your logical interconnect, uplink, VLANs, fiber channel set up correctly. The next natural step will be going to the server profile. Okay, now you can. By default you don't have any of this. You can say I'll just delete it. Okay. By default, you should see a blank over here. You should say, okay, I want to create, profile. A name, whatever name, just, my blade one, so server hardware, pretty much this is, you can leave it unassigned. It's more like a template concept. You can later on copy or clone this one and then assign to individual bay, right? So, but for this one, the most popular, for 60 Gen 8, we'll say, okay, we want to create one and we want to apply to Bay 2. Okay, sorry, Bay 11. And then the device bay is, in regard to how virtual connect allow you to apply this. You can have say, okay, if the hardware is not matching, then I don't want to apply that, with the original, blade, assuming you swap the hardware. If you do the default device bay, if you have the same type of hardware, then it's okay. But if you say, okay, I want to say, okay, device bay plus server hardware, then OneView will look further into, okay, does this server hardware like the serial number matching with the original one? If that, then I don't allow you to do that. In general, you leave it over there. The firmware baseline. So this one is important to understand. So if you say, okay, inside the firmware, I have the NIC, I have a HBA, CNA. Besides the ILO, I have all other, storage array controller, and all this firmware is contained in the repository for the OneView firmware image. But do you want to apply this one? So if you say yes, then pretty much, during after you apply the server profile, the OneView will start to load the server into the maintenance OS, and then will start to upgrade the all the firmware, all the anything related with the server firmware, storage array, CNA, NIC, to using this service pack. Okay, so a good practice, you want to set it up, and so all of your server blade will have the consistent firmware. Right? Okay, connection. This is a core concept for the server profile, because right now, in order for you to talk with the uplink switch, you have to set up the connection for them. So let's just talk about the basic, VMware. So assuming you have a 10 gig trunk, right? So typically for CNA, I have, 210 gig, port A going to my module 1, port B going to my module 2 for redundancy and load sharing. Inside the port A, port B, I can have, the FCOE, the HPA. So pretty much, the for this configuration, the very typical configuration is you want to set up two Ethernet and two fiber channel. So we'll just say, okay, two Ethernet, and assuming this is the trunk, okay, that's the one you want to set. That's the reason why previously you want to set a network set. If you forget about it, that's okay. You can still go back to the network set and just define it, right? So we'll do it here, and this one, remember we're talking about, preferred bandwidth. If in the network set one definition I set at the three will be populated over here, okay? So this is more like default allocated bandwidth, for one inside the 10 gig, because the 10 gig will be shared by HBA and fiber channel, and it's possible multiple flex NIC. Then when there's a congestion, who gets what share, right? This is some default setting. You can adjust here, or you can use the default prefer to set the value for anything related with the network set. The port auto, in very simple configuration, you just want to leave it here. Otherwise, you can manually change it. So for this blade, FlexLAM, that's the default, onboard. It's really for Gen 8, it's not onboard. It's more like a flex, you can order different LAN on motherboard, so the way virtual connect and OneView naming is, this is this is the card, and this is the port, and this is the support inside. So you can, for typically for the card one, port one, you have ABCD. The B can be configured as a hardware iSCSI or fiber channel HBA, but ACD, it will be the Ethernet only. So you can say, okay, ABCD OI config as Ethernet, and they are sharing with 10 gig inside the port A, or you can say, okay, ACD as the Ethernet, and B as the fiber channel, or you say, okay, I only need the two aggregate NIC, pretty much I only say A for this port for Ethernet, and B for fiber channel. The same thing goes to port 2. Okay, so if you just have the basic configuration, you don't know how to handle this, let the OneView handle that. Not bootable. So if you want your server as a Pixie booting, this is a Pixie booting. You want to set as a primary, okay? And then you say add. So if since imagine your VMware host, you will have a two VM NIC showing up and a two VM HBA showing up. So this will be corresponding to your VM NIC 0. The VMNIC 0, you are telling OneView to forward this trunk, this multiple VLAN. Remember, we have a 10, 11, 12 forwarded to VMNIC 0. And inside this trunk, VLAN 10 is untagged. Okay, that's the what's defined previously. Okay, so I want to add another one. You can see it's one already created. I want to add another uh, for the second VMNIC 1, which is internally being mapped to the virtual connect module 1. So do the same. You can optionally set as a secondary Pixie boot. Right, port is still auto, which should be fine. And okay, now my two Ethernet is being added. Now I say, okay, I want to add the two fiber channel, FCOE, VM, HBA, um, VHBA. So pretty much you will see Fabric A, and this is the port, leave it auto. Boot, this is if you say, okay, you do the Pixie plus boot from Sun, boot from Sun, the configuration, right? So pretty much you will say, what's my primary target worldwide port name? So if it's your EMC or a NetApp or 3-part, this needs to be your array storage processor, the port number, whatever being mapped in through the internal fabric going to your Brocade or MDS being zoned over there. So your zoning will be there to be able for the server when it's boot up to be able to see that target port. So you put whatever worldwide port name and the long number over there. Okay, so in this case you know we'll not do that. Later on in the real deployment, I can show you what it will look like. Okay, so we'll say non-bootable, and we'll do another one, Fabric B. This is for my Fabric, Sun Fabric B. You can set it as a secondary. Okay, so right now pretty much I have this fourth one. That's the last one. I say add. So pretty much this is what I have, right? So this will be your VMNIC 0, VMNIC 1, and virtual HBA, virtual HBA is the second one. Okay, so local storage. So if you have a local storage, you can say, okay, if you have a storage controller on the blade, you can optionally set it up. You can set up as a to I do not want the local storage. Even you have a drive, you can erase it. You can set it to none and set the initial local storage. Initial local storage pretty much when you first define it, it will wipe out everything. It will give you a warning if and you can say, okay, do you want this local storage bootable, right? So this is something you can manage. We'll skip this part. Or, you really, read one typical, you can say, okay, I want it bootable if you just want your local, drive to boot. Okay. Sun storage, this is a more advanced feature. This is in related with the 3-part aggregation, integration. So assuming you have, OneView. So OneView with 110, we added two integration. One is a Brocade, auto zoning. Another is with a HP 3-part store serve array. So we can do the auto provision host and virtual volume on 3-part, and on the 3-part, OneView will say, okay, create this host, matching this, server profile name, and then create a volume, you know, defined in my, storage volume, pool over here in the OneView. It's in the main menu, but I didn't go over it. It's more like, to me, it's an advanced setting. So that's the something related. If you do not have a 3-part right now, you don't have to do that. It's not doing anything. So manage boot order, you can say, okay, I really want I don't have a floppy, you can just drag and I want to see my hard drive boot first. If I don't have invalid OS installed, it will boot into the Pixie, and the Pixie will see the load the OS into memory, and then we'll see the available hard drive to install the OS. So this you can change it. The BIOS, you can say, okay, I want to manage BIOS. I want to edit BIOS settings. So this is something you can change. Say, okay, I want the the advanced. Typical setting is there's a performance by default. All the server is using kind of balanced the power and performance. You can say, okay, for this, I really want the maximum, right? So you can change it. So back in old ways, you have to go to the BIOS, for each individual server to change it, or you can use some kind of a script to do that. But right now in the GUI, with OneView, you can just say it, and then you can say, okay, okay, you exit it from the. It will tell you, okay, what you modified and what's the corresponding state it needs to change, right? So advanced, you want to manage, typically you want to do the virtual, to leverage, the storage profile concept, so you can replace the blade with the same MAC address, so your DHCP reserve option can remain the same, worldwide name, so your target and zoning, boot from SAN is the same. So you know, that's pretty much you can leave it as a default. And that's pretty much the complete flow for the server profile. In order for this one to apply, you need to shut down, power off your server blade. The first time you apply the server profile, you need to power it off. Later on, when your server is up, if you only want to apply some VLAN changes, I want to add a VLAN, you don't have to power down the server. But there are some configuration like I want to change my, the boot order, or I want to change my BIOS, then you need to power off the blade for profile to reapply the configuration again. Okay. For simple VLAN changes, you don't have to. But first time, you need to make sure your server is powered off, and then you need to uh, make in order for you to apply. So we'll just say apply. And if you select the especially the firmware baseline or anything related with your local storage for the first time or BIOS, uh, pretty much first time the server will need to go to the the boot into the server service OS in order for it to provision all of this, right? That's the first time behavior, and to upgrade firmware to provision your BIOS. If you have a real already installed. If you have a real hardware, pretty much you can launch the ILO here because this is simulation. It really doesn't do anything, and so you can monitor the process of this booting. Actually, it did. That's interesting. Good. So, but pretty much it will, if it's a real hardware, you will see it's booting, Proline reload and going to the Linux, service OS, trying to provision all of the above, parameters you provision. Okay, so that that's that's pretty much it. So after your server profile is applied, you will see complete. Then you power up the server profile, power up the server, and your server should be able to access your Ethernet and fiber channel network. And some other things, the server hardware, you can see, if you really want to see, okay, what's my physically installed adapter, you can take a look at here. You can see what's my serial number, what's my ILO address. You can go to the ILO and what's the hardware, definition. And you can also launch the console from here to, you know, beside the server profile concept, place. And that should be able to cover the end-to-end uh, uh, the the OneView setup for the initial phase. Set up network set, and then set up the logical interconnect group, then set up the enclosure group, import enclosure, review all the logical interconnect, and interconnect, and set up the server profile. The volume over here, it's the three part. It's really, without this one, uh, you don't have any advanced, integration functionality with three part. You don't have to use it. It's just, the one of the enhancement, for that. Sun manager is really for the brocade. network advisor. You don't have to use it, but it's just, for the for more integration, right? This is a dashboard. It will update with more, whatever you applied, it will, update it over here. Okay. So that should end the whole process of initial configuration. And if you are interested, I plan to post another one too with the real setup. So you can see how it's connect with the Nexus, how it connect with the Brocade, with the 3-part with the Brocade network advisor. Okay.